Welcome back, everybody. Match number 3 here in the Americas playoffs for Hearthstone Grandmasters Season 2. Abar, first off, congratulations for getting through that series. That was a marathon in both of those matches for a 2-0 series. Like that one really went the distance.
I have more questions than answers for you on that one, Sottle. It's a new matchup, not one that players have had the opportunity to explore yet into our very brief metagame history. But yeah, something to look at for sure for both of those players.
I think that's part of the excitement, though, right, of the new format tournaments is that, it's all one thing coming into a matchup that the players have played 1,000 times, we've cast 1,000 times. We're like, okay, here's how this matchup works, right? And just kind of talk through it step by step. When none of us know what's going on because it's a brand new metagame, I think that's so much more interesting. And certainly that second match out of the two, I think there will be a lot of disagreement as to, what the lines were, who was favored, who was supposed to be the aggressor here and there, and various plays. It was super interesting. I want to see some more Res Priest personally, but we are going into a completely different series here. Monsanto, after losing his opener against Nalgadan, now falls into the lower bracket. Where Fr0zen is waiting for him. Fr0zen finished in 4th place in the division, which means he starts in the lower bracket in playoffs. And you can see now, down below, a little Divine Shield bubble representing the class that was protected, first and foremost, by each player, and then the bans, the grayed out icons. So Monsanto has his Priest band, Fr0zen has his Shaman band, Muzzy Shaman pulling out the ban, and Fr0zen protecting his Holy Wrath Paladin. Abar, that is my first step. Why is that deck being protected from Fr0zen's side?
Well, that's an interesting question. So I would have suspected that the Priest would get protected, looking across the board at the matchups that it has on Monsanto's side. Fr0zen, a combo player by nature, tends to like these decks, tends to thrive playing these decks. It is very much his playstyle. He may feel that he has an edge over the field of Monsanto's decks with this particular lineup. I don't know that it's what I would have gone with, but it's very Fr0zen of him.
It is, yeah, that's one way to put it. Here is the Shaman that we have been seeing very commonly throughout this. This is the quest variation from Monsanto. On Fr0zen's side, the banned deck that he will not be playing is what we're calling the Muzzy variation. If it's not supposed to be attributed to Muzzy, I apologize, but that's just what I'm doing. And yeah, we've seen a lot of it at this point. We know what the deal is. If you've played a single game of ladder since this event started, it's a pretty good odds that it was up against this Shaman in particular.
Here you see potentially one of the appeals of protecting the Paladin. Fr0zen might have been hoping to queue it into the Quest Shaman, which was historically pre-patch a favorable matchup for the Paladin, according purely to the statistics of Grandmasters Season 2. I don't suspect that the Desert Hair Evolve combo, as powerful as it is, changes that in this matchup. This isn't the matchup that it particularly thrives in. Paladin can answer mid-rangey boards more effectively than a lot of other classes can. So I can definitely see the appeal. I like Fr0zen leading the Paladin if he's going to protect it.
I suspect that the Hair Evolve helps, but not enough, right? Slamming 10-12 attack into play on turn 3 is definitely going to improve your Paladin matchup by some degree, but those draws do not happen very often, and the later it happens, the more often they're just going to be able to deal with it very efficiently.
Certainly never bad.
I wonder. There is little time.
Now, unfortunately, we appear to be caught on the mulligan screen here. Hopefully we can get away from that as soon as possible. Nightmares about dual evil totems just being played at the same time. There we go.
There we are.
Apologies for the hiccup. We are back with us now.
Monsanto leading with the coin evil totem. The optimal start in a lot of matchups for the Quest Shaman. Lackey's accruing value over the course of the game, especially against decks that don't interact with it particularly well. Tends to pay dividends later on.
Yes. And while you were live during that series, obviously Monsanto's series broadcast with the broadcast delay, and so Monsanto was tweeting about his thoughts on the previous series, and he really just said that it came down to that game 1, where he lost a couple of coin flips towards the end with his Shivala, and he said at that point there was no way his decks won because of the 2 matchups that he was up against. So he just felt he was in a rough beat in the situation that he was in, so he kind of just has to shake that off and readjust for this new series now against Fr0zen. who coincidentally, you might notice, is playing from the same location that Hunter Ace was earlier, which I do believe is Fino's streaming room, as they are all together. They came together, practiced for this event, and generally just hanging out, having a good time, playing some Hearthstone.
I wonder.
Dr. Boom and Baku watching over them all. No clean answer here. This Acolyte of Pain on 3 from Fr0zen, which is nothing atypical in the matchup. Shaman, Quest Shaman specifically, plays a lot of 1/1s onto the board that they have to play onto the board to further their quest progress. Again, Fr0zen being rewarded for part of the way his deck is built for this Quest Shaman matchup he seemed to have been expecting.
Fr0zen takes his 0-mana card draw at the start of the turn. It's just a matter of how much he really cares about this evil totem. And I was about to say, I would be surprised to see anything done to address the board this turn. I think Prismatic Lens was just too attractive there. You've reached a point of diminishing returns in killing the evil totem, really, where it's kind of done its damage at this point. Your opponent has an entire handful of lackeys that's likely they can do whatever they want, regardless of whether you give them 1 or 2 more.
As we saw on full display in our second game of our previous match, that there definitely is a critical mass of lackeys adding cards to your hand, and how valuable that becomes.
Sometimes it is important to play some Hearthstone cards that are not 1/1s.
I'm fast and furious!
Ooh. Tempting, of course, to trade the Rush minion here, but that leaves your board very vulnerable to a Consecration.
Yep.
However,
it's the argument to say that like Consecration is not an efficient turn for my opponent this turn anyway, but I don't think that matters too much in the matchup. Like, you need to stick boards and you need to represent pressure.
You can make Consecration a very inefficient turn with the use of this Soul of the Murlocs, if you so choose.
That is very true. Monsanto just willing his minion to go face. Nope, fortunately not. But you gotta check, right? Like, one day it's gonna bug out and work, you might as well.
I can't say I haven't done it. Typically when my opponent has lethal on the board,
yes,
and I want it instead, that's when I check one more time to see if Rush still works that way. So with the Consecration off the table, there are 10 cards in Fr0zen's hand already. So it isn't a great turn to just be drawing additional cards. Do you take your Consecration now to set up a 2-turn clear? And you look at a lot of the cards in Fr0zen's hand, his alternative plays are drawing additional cards, which is difficult to navigate from this position when he needs to free some hand space, or developing the True Silver Champion this turn.
Yes. Setting a True Silver and saying go is about the best thing I can come up with that isn't a Consecration here, but even, like you said, Consecration to set up the 2-turn clear, like, what even is the 2-turn clear with this hand? It feels like Fr0zen just leaves a bunch of 1/1s on the board at that point.
Let me think.
So if this Novice whiffs on a playable card, Fr0zen might even have to play a timeout this turn. Okay. Going to time out anyway.
From Fr0zen's perspective, he could be dead this turn. There are 2 randomly generated spells that could be Bloodlust. But as much as anything, that might have just been a freeing hand space, Frost Nova type of timeout.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's understanding that if he can get control of the board, Shaman doesn't represent pressure over and over again very well, again, as evidenced by the previous series. So it's not always necessary to have a timeout on the turn that you activate your first Shivala combo, for example, which is like a classic turn that you want to do it for complete security. Quite often, your Shivala bumping into something on their board is going to keep you alive anyway, against everything but the most ridiculous of, like, you know, triple lackey weaponized Wasp hands coming back the other way.
Quest complete efficiently here from Monsanto. Mind Control Tech is effectively a blank 3-mana 3/3. in this matchup. It's extremely rare you get any value beyond that. However, setting it up now is going to unlock some other resources like this life drinker. Start getting value, and from Fr0zen's perspective, again, I was speaking in hypotheticals of the 2-turn setup to clear the board right now. It still is not available based on the cards Fr0zen has drawn so far, so he's going to keep digging.
Interesting. The 3-3 gets hammered there as opposed to the face. He did have the opportunity to Fr0zen to just lock the board here and prevent anything else being played from Monsanto. Bloodlust here on the 6-minion board, if it was randomly generated, would represent, what, 18 plus this board, which is
25.
25, yeah. So he does play around Bloodlust lethal by killing a 3-3 there.
Makes sense to me. Back on Monsanto's side, his board is stuck for multiple turns here. Not much room to develop onto it additionally, so I would like to cash in on my life drinker while I have the opportunity. Get the damage in now, set up the Shutter Walk for later. Not too many other options available here.
Right. Yeah, I think like the equation is made very simple by the fact that you only have one board spot here, so play the biggest thing. It's not like generating lackeys really does a whole lot for him in the immediacy because he can't get any use out of them anyway.
There is little time.
Possibly some consideration if Monsanto is starting to feel like this evil totem is a liability, he could cast his ancestral healing on his own totem.
Okay.
Does look like it's just going to be the life drinker pass turn, however.
I suspect, honestly, that every turn that passes for Monsanto, where this totem has a chance of handing him the damage lackey, he's going to let it keep rolling because he has not picked up any of those things just yet, and those are the ones that he's really going to want to build up to try and reach critical mass. And now, finally, the fabled clear has been achieved. It took Fr0zen a long time to get here. Now with Consecration, Wild Pyromancer, Christology, he is able to take care of this whole board. Yeah, whenever you're ready. We've got
It's a lot of splashing. Yeah, we'll let them figure that out. Now from back to Monsanto's side, he actually doesn't have a great way to build a new board. He can clear off the Wild Pyromancer using the Totemic Smash, I believe it is called. Yes, Totemic Smash. So he doesn't have to develop into a Wild Pyromancer, which is convenient. But in terms of raw stat efficiency, to rebuild another board, he's looking at a lot of 1/1s here. Not anything super threatening.
Yeah, the Plague of Murlocs that has been picked up does make it a little bit more exciting. Did you guys talk about this natural inclusion of Plague of Murlocs that a couple of the Americas players have in the previous series? Because I think Nalgadan is playing one as well, right?
We did mention it, yeah. Dan commented that it would be good in the Priest matchup specifically, and then we saw it used against N'Zoth Priest, which I don't think is the Priest he was referring to.
Oh, Dan's been playing a lot of Res Priest. He might very well have been talking about Res Priest.
Fair enough.
I do think it's kind of an interesting conclusion. I was very staunchly against Plague of Murlocs being in Quest Shaman up until this point, but I think actually specifically that card, the Desert Hare, suddenly makes it a lot more justifiable as just like a vanilla card in your deck because of the opportunity for it to just function as a bootleg evolve in the situation and just turn it into some decent-sized Murlocs on the board. Like, it's unlikely to be a completely dead card in any matchup now because you do have that ability. So it does kind of interest me just because of the payoff that you do get from some other matchups.
When the 2 evolves and the 2 mutates just aren't enough. Although, to be fair,
I mean,
Monsanto,
you want to be mutating your Mogus. You want to be mutating your Hares. Come on now.
Monsanto is actually a single mutate gamer. That is one of the cards he has shaved to make room for the Hare Evolve package.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that one either. I think Mutate is one of the best cards in the deck in a variety of matchups.
I hope you like my
You have a tough time getting me to cut the 0 mana cards, that's for sure.
It is tough, though, because things do have to make room in this list. And we see people, you know, going down to 1 Bog Slosher, 1 Mind Control Tech, cutting the Giggling Inventors entirely, cutting the former champs entirely. Like, these are all very high-quality cards, to be perfectly honest. And it just goes to show, like, the card quality in Quest Shaman is kind of ridiculous when you consider some of the things they have to cut to make room for these new and improved editions. So yet again, A-Bar, Monsanto just back in this position where he can only really develop a kind of mediocre low-power board here.
The mana.
Boy, I just really like non-quest evolved Shaman. I'm telling you, the Bloodlust, the Bloodlust makes such a world of difference here. What are we doing dirtling around?
I mean, I did hear you guys talking a lot about, like, oh, you know, maybe Eddie is paying respect to there being like a randomly generated Bloodlust here or whatever. That is one natural buff that the token version of the deck does have. Like, they just play that card in their deck. You are always going to give respect to the idea of a Bloodlust coming down. But I also, like, think this is some of the position where a card like Former Champ is missing from the deck.
Yes.
Because that is a card that just goes, bang, power, in play, deal with it. And that's the kind of card that's just sorely lacking right now, unless it's 2-card combinations like an Evolve setup.
In the defense of this Quest Shaman, I will say that I don't feel like we've seen the Hair Evolve combo coming together very often in our
I don't think it's
matches on
happened
camera.
a single time in Quest Shaman. Fr0zen now down to 7 cards remaining in deck. Does still have a Prismatic Lens left to cast, which will take him down to 5. He has a Flash of Light down to 4. He also has 1 more timeout remaining. So he's almost guaranteed to be down to 3 cards right now, which gives him very few turns that he needs to get creative with. And as long as Monsanto is sat here staring at that true silver champion, he knows that a potential OTK from 30 is possible. Even without that Emperor Fr0zen, you can OTK from 30 before that card even came into the deck, as long as you hold on to your Elven Archer. What was your uh-oh in regards to?
Well, so I was concerned about the Holy Wrath flipping with the Emperor Fr0zen. Obviously, as you mentioned, the Elven Archer still allows the OTK to be possible, but it does require Fr0zen to hold on to more of his resources than maybe he would be hoping to do in this position. It is not the end of the world to flip Holy Wrath and Emperor Fr0zen, but it is the outcome you were hoping to avoid.
Okay.
Frankly, I feel like Fr0zen's position is commanding at this point,
Yes.
so I was looking for reasons for Monsanto fans to get excited right there.
Reasons to be concerned. I'm just looking at a nice cheap tempo Emperor in the hand for Fr0zen right now. That looks great to me.
Sylvanas was at one time 5 mana. Fr0zen has never been.
Yep, this seems about right to me. Ship the damage. You know you need to start dealing damage. He very much gets the favorable end of that outcome. 4 of the higher quality Murlocs. None of the highest quality Murlocs, but pretty good nonetheless.
From nothing.
Monsanto looking for damage here. Lightning Bolt fits the bill.
These cost 3, 2, 2, and 2 on board. I was just considering what Evolve looked like there off the Discover, but yeah, not expensive enough minions in play to really be worth it. Unlikely to be significant upgrades, apart from the 3 mana 3, 2. Wait, why do I think it's cost 3? The 2 mana 3, 2. What am I talking about? Why do I think it's cost? That would be terrible at 3. Draw both players a card, 3 mana 3, 2. No one would play that card.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Certainly not with a ticket at BlizzCon on the line, they wouldn't.
So now that is an active Zephyrus over on the far left of Fr0zen's hand, which is a little bit obscured right now, slightly hard to tell, but it is very much active.
Quality Consecration available for Fr0zen here if he so chooses.
And he's now found his way down to 4 cards remaining.
Fr0zen, of course, doesn't know what these spells are in Monsanto's hand, but he does know that 4 of them are spells.
He does know that leaving 7 minions in play is incredibly scary against randomly generated Shaman spells.
Of course, yes. Just weighing the option between quality consecration turn. He could pull the trigger on using the Zephyrs now if he wanted to.
Sure, yeah, that's an interesting option because he does, as we say, still have that Elven Archer win condition set up from 30. Honestly, now he just kind of has board. He's pushing a little bit of damage. The consecration goes through. Monsanto now at the point where a single life drinker doesn't even full heal him. Fr0zen just tempoing out minions to continue the pressure. This is looking rough. And I think your assessment, Abar, was absolutely correct, that it does not appear that this matchup has changed significantly enough to feel like the Shaman has really gained massive percentage here.
Gonna need a little help. Ethereal Lackey number 17 coming down here. More damage. Let's do some counting. So we take the Lightning Bolt here. We are up to 10 bursts in hand plus a life drinker. There's another Totemic Smash. So when we draw our
18?
Emperor Fr0zen.
Yeah, how much mana does that all cost? So 6 on the life drinker, and then he can play 4 of these 5 spells? So his max damage in 1 turn is 6, 9, 12, 14, 16 currently. Yeah, I mean, he's building up a plan, I can tell you that much.
He is closer than Fr0zen will think he is.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I like getting the drinker in now. We're running out of time, frankly.
Three cards remaining now. So Fr0zen is free to rip one of these Holy Wraths if he would like to. There is still a Shivala remaining in the deck, so he actually just has a 33% chance for lethal this turn if he would like it. If it doesn't happen, he's just a card deeper in his deck, but it looks like Fr0zen is diverting to the Emperor Fr0zen instead.
By the power of Ragnaros, I have the power!
Respecting the range of Monsanto's hand, of course, with the timeouts.
Yes. Well, so if in the world where the 1 in 3 whiffs, I was intending to time out this turn anyway.
Yes.
Reporting for duty.
It's just whether this Emperor really changes anything in terms of win condition. He can play a 0 mana Shivala that gets drawn, shuffle it back in twice. No,
So
he only
this
has
is
1 Baleful.
a lethal setup, right? So if Fr0zen draws not Shivala,
Yep.
then he can go Holy Wrath next turn, and one of the two of them will be Shivala.
I wonder.
Sure. So 66% of the time he does not draw Shivala, and then he has guaranteed lethal on the following turn.
Yes.
I was suggesting taking a 1 in 3. He has found the opposite of that.
Right.
So therefore a much more favorable position. Yes, correct.
Double pump Azarano, extra Star Whip, high mount, nice room for mana spice coming right up.
Do you have that memorized yet?
The coffee order? No. I don't listen to these things, Abar. Come on now.
There is little time.
You know there's somebody out there who does.
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty of people. I do feel very guilty sometimes about all the incredible work that they put into the art and the names of these cards and the flavor text and the entry lines and all the voice acting. I just want to play some cards. I just don't really pay too much attention to it.
That is the aspect of your broadcasting where Raven carried you.
Yes,
He's always
absolutely.
an incredible enthusiast for those things.
The one and only area of the broadcast, I will say.
I set you up for that one, and
Yeah,
you caught
you
it.
did.
So there are 2 cards remaining in Fr0zen's deck list here. He can Holy Wrath Monsanto in the face, but now there is taunts in the way of him swinging this True Silver to actually close out that damage.
And what is the other card? Because that's actually critical information right now, right? If it costs 3 or more, then I'm sure Fr0zen would have just ripped this by now. Just the card remaining is struggling. Oh, it's the second Christology, right?
Let
Yeah, it's the second
me
think
Christology.
so?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm almost
25 Zephyrus for lethal.
I'm going to say Frostbolt. I think Zephyrus is feeling Frostbolt here. Unlucky.
Have you ever seen a Frostbolt instead of a Lightning Bolt?
I thought he'd want to be mana efficient.
Maybe. Either way, Fr0zen finds the line, good recognition, and of course, when you need to rely on someone to win a game for you, your chair is who you turn to. We all know that chair is undefeated on any Hearthstone stream worldwide, and it did not change anything as the chair was victorious there as well. But I think that was a very well-navigated game from Fr0zen. I think a lot of people would have panicked in a couple of spots when there was a lot of damage represented on board. Like the Soul of the Murloc situation looked bad for him when it got to that point, right? But I think Fr0zen did very well just to take his time in that situation and just find himself the eventual clear. You agree?
Yeah, that really felt like the only phase of the game where he was under threat based on board presence. Just the raw amount of attack power put on the board over the course of that game just wasn't impressive from the Shaman side. A lot of one-attack minions. The former champ cut, as you mentioned, maybe hurting the deck. The lack of Desert Hare Evolve hurting the deck, at least with that draw. But I don't know. I'm not sold on this. I need more stats on my board, Sottle. I want more stats on my board.
Avar, amongst his many talents, is also our stats man for Hearthstone Grandmasters. Just about any time you hear me reference a percentage of something or other, it comes from this man right next to me. But I do like that. Former champ thing only just became apparent to me watching that game, and also the previous series, I guess, with Nalgadan, where it's like, wow, this deck is actually a little bit toothless now in terms of what it can generate in terms of power into play. They have their big explosive Shudderwock turn, which, based on the number of faceless lackeys or desert hares or whatever else, can make you a board from mediocre to underwhelming, somewhere in the range of that. But apart from that, how do they make big boards that threaten to kill the opponent? It seems to really struggle with it, right?
You know my answer. Cut the quest. I'm telling you, Sottle, it's the wave of the future.
Okay, so cut the quest, and in exchange, you are playing Thunderheads and token
Bloodlust.
generators. But so for you, just Bloodlust means that you don't need the bigger minions. You can be carried by tokens because you have that constant threat of Bloodlust behind it.
Yeah, very effectively, and not just the Bloodlust, but the Bloodlust in tandem with the Soul of the Murlocs. We saw how effective it was in that last game. The Muzzy build that I am favoring, I run something very close myself when I play my ladder games with Shaman. It just naturally includes the Soul.
Of course you do. You're from America. You just copy what Muzzy does.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of our thing.
Yeah,
he's been carrying the team for years. But yeah, I mean, just naturally including that in your deck, you saw the window of opportunity was there, right? Monsanto stuck that board with Soul of the Murlocs. That's the phase of the game where you want to be bloodlusting, ending the game before Paladin gets the ball rolling. So that, I think, the combination of bloodlust and the adhesiveness of the minions in your decks is what you like that.
I appreciate the word adhesiveness.
I saved my good words for you, buddy.
9 out of 10 casters just say stickiness. Not this guy. He's going next level. But what is the next level now in this series? With the Paladin down, looks like we're about to get our answer as we're being shown this Shaman from Monsanto, which appears to have entered the system as Aggro Shaman, which I'm deeply upset about. But anyway, moving forward.
It is the same Shaman. It is the Quest Shaman. Monsanto going directly back to the well. Fr0zen, after securing the win with his protected deck, the Paladin. If he suspects the Shaman is going to be re-queued, I'm wondering if we might see this Mechathune Warrior from Fr0zen, which we have yet to touch on, but I am intrigued. The addition of Emperor Thor0zen into Fr0zen's Mechathune Warrior allowed him to shave some of the less useful cards like the Inner Rage, but cannot fault the man. When you need to turn somewhere, it might as well be Combo Priest, am I right?
I mean, it's pretty simple, Abar. He's 1-0 up in the series, and he hasn't played Priest yet. What else is he going to do?
I'm just excited for the Warrior.
Dan and myself were actually testing this Mechathune Warrior last night or the night before, and sort of played some practice games against each other and then continued to play some games separately. And he posted a screenshot, sent me a screenshot of a very interesting board state where he had fallen back on his old school Sylvanas mechanics to actually find a Mechathune lethal where he wouldn't have been able to kill all his own minions, but by killing a Sylvanas, The Sylvanas Death Rattle triggers first, steals his last minion, and then the Mechathune blew up his board. And I was like, you know what, Dan? Polite round of applause. Like, well done for remembering your Sylvanas Death Rattle sequencing mechanics from way back in the day. But before we get too hype about potential Mechathunes, we do have the matter of this Shaman versus Priest matchup to contend with. And there is, again, that card Desert Hare in the hand. And I think this is something that we haven't talked about. We have talked a lot about how Desert Hare Evolve on turn 4 can just end the game against a variety of classes. However, we continue to see players throwing away the Desert Hare and the Evolve in a lot of situations. Is that something that you agree with?
I do. I know it sounds ridiculous, but in matchups where you have to make it to turn 4, you don't want the Desert Hare, right? And you don't want to let the Priest get too far ahead. In the meantime, is part of the reason you mulligan it. Another part of the reason is that the combination of those two cards, Desert Hare and Evolve, the Evolve is useful pretty much regardless of what your hand looks like. The Desert Hare is awful if you don't find the Evolve. So I would rather have the Evolve than the Desert Hare if I can only have one or the other.
Right.
But frankly, regardless, Desert Hare is just not optimal in this particular matchup.
Yes. Yeah, particularly against Priest, right? Like, what are you going to do? Play 3 1/1s into the Northshire Cleric 1/2 Wild Pyromancer deck? Like, that doesn't seem particularly exciting. Oh, why did I say Wild Pyromancer? See what I mean? You just have to reference it in passing, and then it shows up, Abar. This is how it works. Pyro, Coin, Circle of Healing hand from Fr0zen. This one is going to get messy quickly.
Would you ever have been tempted to mutate your evil totem there?
No. Next question.
I wouldn't either, but being extremely results-oriented and being able to see both hands, I was thinking, you know, Desert Hare Evolve on turn 4, if we can just contest this Cleric.
If that was a Novice or a Cable Rat, like, no question that Mutate is getting played to try and roll a 3-attack minion and make Fr0zen do something with his turn that isn't this.
What else do you want me to talk about? This Priest turn?
Go ahead. You like it? Did it seem like the right line of play to you?
Seems good.
Okay, excellent. Glad we got that one nailed down. Fr0zen just laughing to himself, which sometimes is about all you can do in this situation. Many things have changed. Many decks have improved. Many decks have got worse by proxy because other decks have improved. Priest has just about stayed the same and stayed in just about the same spot, and that spot is right at the very top of the metagame.
Priest was the second highest win rate deck archetype with a statistically significant sample size over the course of Grandmasters Season 2. It was above 55%. The highest win rate archetype was actually Reno Hunter, which eclipsed 62% win rate. It was a deck that was not represented nearly as much as I think it should have been over the course of the season. But in contrast, Priest being the second highest win rate archetype when everybody knows it's going to be in everybody's lineup is insane.
It's annoying me that you're doing that from memory. There is no notes in front of him. He just did that off the top of his head. I'm so frustrated. My memory is terrible. I have everything written down in front of me at all times.
Sottle, of course, would also be able to rattle off all of these statistics if he paid any attention to the research. I'm kidding. I kid. I know. You try.
Of all the casters to call out not reading the research packet, come on.
You are my number, nerd.
Quickly.
Meanwhile, this Wild Pyromancer has to die. We have to beg the question of what this Light Warden is doing in the middle.
An excellent question.
Is it logical based on expected plays from the opponent, right? Because a lot of the time, if, say, a Lackey comes into play there, Fr0zen might want to bump the Light Warden and re-heal it. But I think a lot of the time you're going to be interested in healing the other minions and getting a huge attack swing out of your Light Warden, right? Whoa!
Hello.
Those are big.
Those are big, and that Cleric is dead.
Dead. Said this earlier, step 1 for beating Priest, kill the Cleric. Step 1 achieved by Monsanto. I love how this, like, wry, ironic smile from Monsanto was exactly the same when his opponent got the nuts on him as when he got the nuts on his opponent. It's exactly the same reaction.
He's a man who just appreciates a good beating one way or the other.
Yeah. As long as someone's getting beaten up, he's feeling it.
How about an Overload to complement your Thunderhead? How do you feel about that one?
Pretty good. Pretty good if you're a Monsanto fan. There are not a great deal of overload cards in his deck in comparison to what A-bar Shaman, as I will now call it, chooses to play.
I will say this. In my Evolved Shaman list, I like playing 2 Spirit of the Frogs. It is 1 card different. I like 2 Spirit of the Frogs and 1 Sea Giant, which is a slight deviation from the Muzzy list. So because it is only 29 cards the same, I will call it
A-bar Shaman. Yeah.
my deck.
Absolutely. Change 1 card, call it your own deck.
Yes.
Hearthstone 101.
Monsanto perhaps debating whether he wants to clear everything on this board except for the injured Blade Master, or whether he wants to try and deal a little bit of damage to the Blade Master to mitigate the threat of Divine Spirit the next turn. 6 power is always going to be committed to this injured Tol'vir, and he does opt to isolate the injured Blade Master.
Yeah,
Willing
makes
to
sense
risk
to me.
the consequences there.
Yeah, even if a big health buff comes down, even if a big health buff and an Inner Fire comes down, then there's still that big taunt minion in the way, which means it's just going to be kind of inefficiently trading into a 4-8 as it stands. For Fr0zen now, do you just have to do it anyway? Just try and stick this 1 big minion to the board for the long term? You like that here? Or just immediately draw more cards with Cleric instead?
I got you, friend.
I think you have to try and stick it for the medium turn.
Sure.
Have it buy you a couple of turns here to maybe bridge the gap until you can set up a Northshire Cleric Circle turn, until you can draw Bwansamdi and maybe accelerate your game plan that way. You have to give Monsanto something to think about here, right? Even though they're not the cards that are in Fr0zen's hand right now, you know it's going through Monsanto's brain. Okay, Silence, Divine Spirit, Inner Fire, these are all things he has to consider that could, frankly, buy Fr0zen some time to draw some more resources.
Still 1 Sludge Slurper remaining, so Witchwood Piper can pick that up to activate the Overload again. But it would be slightly inefficient here just in terms of quest completion. So I like using the Barista. Minimal value, but value is not Monsanto's #1 concern in this matchup. He just wants to maintain tempo, and he also wants to load damage onto the board so that he's able to test this Blade Master as efficiently as possible. Expose this Cleric just for a single card draw, though.
I get the impression Fr0zen doesn't intend for this game to go very much longer.
That's very fair.
He'll take 1 card now over something, 2 birds in the bush.
So, 7, 9, 10 damage on board.
I wonder.
Sludge Slurper can add 2 more for 12 and complete the quest. Sandstorm Elemental then doubles up on the quest for 14 damage and then summons 2 more. So if he wants to throw everything into a 6/16 and leave a Northshire Cleric alive, he can kill it this turn, I believe.
Alternatively, you can try and leverage this Titanic Lackey to create a big taunt and prevent a counterattack while setting up a 2-turn lethal of your own.
Do like that a lot better, yes. Just sacrificing a small amount of damage into this Cleric and then looking to be aggressive makes a lot more sense.
I'm on board. So 7, 8, 11, 12, 14 power is what Monsanto is representing. After this healing totem gets cleared.
And Fr0zen now knows that there is, at minimum, 1 Overload card in his opponent's hand. There is no way there would not be after Hero Power Barista hit the board on the previous turn.
So by my math, Hero Power Life Drinker adds 6. If Sludge Slurper finds a Kobold Lackey, we can trade off one of our 1/1s to make board space, and that is lethal damage from Monsanto's side. So I think I would like to start this turn with a Hero Power Sludge Slurper, see what we find. But it looks like he's kicking things off with a Flesh Shaper instead.
I wonder.
Maybe he wants to make sure that gets down while it costs 0.
We see.
Looks like Monsanto might be a little bit tunneled on clearing the board here, which is perfectly reasonable in the situation.
Even if he trades a 2-power minion, he will still have lethal with the Cobalt Lackey setup. So this is fine.
I counted 3 over with the description that you gave.
Yes. There is the Lackey.
That's good. Doesn't end up mattering. He can only play 1 life drinker alongside the Kobold Lackey. But yes, I believe that is still lethal. If he sacrifices 3 more. No, now with the Mogul on board, is that too much? 3, 7, 10, 12 going phase, 18, 22. Nope, still 1 over. He's good.
When tunneling, it helps to have a Kobold sort of dig your way out of it, you know what I mean?
Excellent.
There it is.
Coming in with the big calls. Monsanto coming in with the big plays, getting himself back into this series in what I think most people would still describe as an unfavored matchup. And coming through, again, the chat, what is Fr0zen doing in between every game? Even though Fr0zen got off to an incredible start in what is considered to be an incredible matchup, with the Norshire, the Pyromancer, the Circle of Healing, draw the deck early on, you know, get yourself a full hand, that one outcome where he, Monsanto hit a very nice evolve where, okay, the stats were great, forget about those for a second. One of his guys could attack that turn.
Yes.
That's what really mattered, and then he was able to kill the Norshire Cleric, because without that happening, you give Priest a whole other turn to buff up their Cleric, hide their Cleric behind a 2/6 taunt, like whatever they want to do to mean that you then don't have a way of challenging it on the following turn.
Yes, it was a combination of, you know, the charge damage to clear the Norshire Cleric, the massive amount of stats that were generated off of that evolve. You might have watched that game and thought to yourself, why in the world would you ever mulligan Desert Hair? That was insane. I promise you that wasn't the average outcome. I still stand by mulliganing for Evolve, more so than valuing Desert Hair in your opening hand. You have to make it to turn 4. But boy, it sure did make me look silly there. And Mechathune Warrior, Sottle, forget everything we were talking about.
Abar, time to get excited because the Mechathune Warrior is coming out. And Fr0zen does have history with this archetype in Hearthstone Grandmasters. I was just clarifying with Fr0zen on the last cast that we did together that it was actually in Season 1 in the Specialist format where he had a Mechathune Warrior in one of the side decks that he had available to him. But here, Mechathune Warrior going up against Holy Wrath Paladin. Now, this is a matchup that I did specifically test against Fr0zen. We tested this matchup with these decks for this exact encounter. And for me, the way I chose to play it, or the way that I was most successful in playing it, was continuing to just play it as an Armour Gain deck. Because you have so much extra card draw in the deck because you're a Mechathune deck, you can actually race them to the bottom of the deck. And if you draw every Armour Gain card in equal time that it takes them to get to the bottom of their deck, you are going to get out of range of even 50 damage coming through on the other side.
2 Eternium Rover, 2 Weapons
with
Project,
honor. Yep.
2 Shield Slam, and the Ziliax. Fr0zen has spared no expense in terms of padding his armor total. I am guessing that with his deck construction, with this Mechathune Warrior, he very much had Holy Wrath Paladin in mind.
And 2 Whirlwinds and 2 Warpaths that can go alongside those
Yes.
Eternium Rovers as well. 2 Acolyte of Pains that can be used with those same cards to draw through even more efficiently and find your way to those other shield blocks and weapon projects and so on. This is a hard deck to beat with just 50 to 60 damage, as absurd as that sounds.
So in case you're asking yourself, how does Fr0zen make room for all of these utility cards in this Control Warrior deck, especially with the addition of Emperor Fr0zen, it actually helped free up some space in Mechathune Warrior, the addition of Fr0zen, because you now have the liberty to remove Inner Rage from your deck, which used to be an essential piece of the OTK Mechathune combo.
Right.
You would have to Inner Rage your minions and then Whirlwind them to fit it all in one turn. Obviously, Whirlwind costing 1 mana, Boomship costing 9. Fr0zen has opened up a whole new world of possibilities where you can remove your board with multiple Whirlwinds in the same turn. You can throw in a shield slam to help you out if you need to. There's a lot of ways you can sort of assemble the combo that now you cut these dead cards out of your deck that were in there strictly for the purpose of ending the game in one turn.
Yep, even like Warpath Whirlwind is a possibility if you've discounted the right options. Just be clear, it's those of you who have just never seen what Mechathune Warrior does. Obviously, you exhaust all of your cards, you play every other card out of your hand, as with any Mechathune deck. Then the idea is that you boom ship Malygos and Mechathune out onto the board at the same time, and then because Malygos is giving +5 damage, 2 Whirlwinds, for example, will then kill your entire board simultaneously, ending the game.
As Sottle referenced, I do not anticipate any of that to be relevant here, as Fr0zen's primary win condition will be to pad his armor total to the point where Monsanto cannot end the game.
Yeah, I did have a good time in several games against Fr0zen just playing the boom ship for tempo, just like just throwing a Malygos and a 10-10 out on the board and going, well, good luck with that, my friend.
Boomship is actually an incredibly powerful tempo card.
Yes.
It's a card that hasn't shined in non-OTK archetypes since it's entered Standard, but it's always felt not that far off to me. When I play Mechathune decks and I tempo it out in matchups where my OTK doesn't matter, I was like, it's pretty good. That was 20 power of Rush for 9 mana.
Right.
That looks like a clean Dynamatic to me.
It does. Only downside here, he is doing neither draw cards nor gain armor this turn. I mean, I guess so to speak, the Eternium Rover is doing its job.
Light the fuses!
Preventing damage is the equivalent of gaining armor.
Also, yes. I do like that the bump was not necessary for the Dynamatic to clear, but Fr0zen just cashing in his armor gain where he can by guaranteeing throwing that Eternium Rover into a 1-attack minion. It's the best it's ever going to get.
I wonder...
For Monsanto, your goal as the Holy Wrath Paladin is to end this game quickly. In typical Control Warrior matchups, you are able to draw through your deck faster than the Warrior does. That is less true in this matchup, but essentially you want to assemble all of your damage as fast as you can and hope that a critical mass of the key armor gain cards are still in the bottom of the Warrior player's deck.
Right.
So thinking about that as our
Let me think.
holistic game plan here, something like Tempo Acolyte into a 3-power minion doesn't look as appealing because you might want to find a spot where you can draw multiple cards off that down the line.
Sure.
So Monsanto's actually going to clear hand space here and empty this timeout because he does not expect that to be relevant at any point in the game. He wants to maximize his draw later on.
Yeah, he's also going to continue to push damage face with the weapon instead of taking care of the Eternium Rover, which is slightly unusual looking to me when there was even a 1-1 on the board, which means, you know, by going face, you push 2 damage, but this Eternium Rover is going to gain 2 extra armor because it can definitely trade into a 1-1. Much the same either way, I suppose.
The most important part is that he's swinging.
Yes.
He wants to get that damage in before Harrison Jones comes down, before the second weapons project is unlocked. Every single point of damage matters in this matchup.
Absolutely. So Monsanto on the previous turn, as you said, did open up a lot of hand space for himself. I think in consideration that not only does he have Prismatic Lens, double Novice, but also... Oh, okay. I think he saw that in Monsanto's eyes as well. If you guys don't know why that was a scary clenching moment for Monsanto there, it's that if your Shivala flips with a Holy Wrath in this matchup, you can essentially concede on the spot at that point. There is almost no way you are going to get over the line because you will have a 25 mana Holy Wrath in your hand. At that point, your goal will be to have your Emperor stick for 16 turns in order to be able to cast your second Holy Wrath. That sounds unlikely.
Yeah, I want to say you'd probably die to fatigue if your opponent AFK'd that hard before you got to 16 ticks.
I feel like your opponent would die to the 5/5 that was in play for 16 turns if it stuck that long.
Oh, I'm assuming we're just not even attacking with that, right?
Yeah, fair. Okay, fair enough. This complete nonsense hypothetical situation clearly needs ground rules.
Let's not be savages here, Subtle.
45 already for Fr0zen, and he has barely done anything. He has another shield block remaining, another weapons project remaining, a second Eternium rover remaining, and a lot of whirlwind effects to go alongside those Eternium rovers as well, and of course that Ziliax on top of all of that. Plus just, you know, his hero power.
Plus his hero power. Fr0zen even has the liberty with the double weapons project plus Harrison Jones build to save a piece of weapon removal for a potential Ashbringer from a Tyrion created by Zephyrus.
Sure.
So even that, as an alternative game plan from the Paladin side, where you are attempting to get some chip damage in to help set up the OTK potential, is covered by Fr0zen's build.
2 bankers, 1 Wrath in hand. Shivala already costing 0, which would mean now the double combo would not still be 1 out of range, right? You do actually need to hit all of the pieces.
What now?
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually brought this up in a match I was casting with Dan, but one interaction that I have noticed that is new to me since the old cards were re-released into the standard environment is that if Emperor Fr0zen reduces Zephyrus to 1 mana, as long as you are ahead on board, Zephyrus will pretty consistently...
Oh! The Holy Wrath went away, Abar!
So Zephyrus will pretty consistently
Please,
offer...
I'm very interested. Cool story, Bob.
If it costs 1 mana, it will pretty consistently offer you Alexstrasza if you are ahead on board. Zephyrus understands if your opponent is at 30 health that you would want to put them to 15 and then follow that up by pushing damage with your minions.
There's like a threshold, right, of how much damage you need to be able to push?
And I haven't solved exactly what it is. I know 10 power is good enough because I've tested it with Oasis Surger.
Then you're one step. I was about to say I know 12 power is good enough, so you've one-upped me there.
There
we
you
can
go.
slowly work our way down. We'll get there. But bad news. Monsanto left himself in a position. I don't even want to say left himself in a position because he did everything he could. He, foreseeing on turn 8 that he was going to be very heavy on hand size, threw away a timeout on turn 5. Like, I don't think you can ask for much more forward planning than that in the situation. It just so happened that in a 1 out of 8 scenario, even less than that because there's every world where he draws the second Holy Wrath before that 1 in 8 even comes up. So it happens that in a 1 in 8 situation, he was left just kind of having to hold that, honestly. I think his response here is admirable as well. This is about all he can do. Just say, all right, now I have to have minions hit face to win this game. Oh boy.
And the backup plan, as Fr0zen does survive the brawl, but will die nonetheless. The backup plan I was considering, now that we know Holy Wrath is gone, is maybe we banker some Zephyrs into our deck. See if that can save us. Monsanto decides, you know what, my best chance of winning is if I randomly stick damage right now if my opponent's Control Warrior deck with a pile of AoE effects has none of them in hand currently. Maybe I can deal enough damage with minions to win. It's a respectable strategy as any in this position.
Yeah. It was saying, you know, sometimes I get to attack with this board and I deal, you know, upwards of 12, 15 damage, however much it was. And then on top of that, I can throw down a Holy Wrath immediately to try and end the game on a 1 in 5, 1 in 6, whatever my deck size is at that point, which I think is a pretty respectable position to be in the matchup. And again, I want to be very clear, like Monsanto did everything I think reasonably a player could be expected to do to play around that scenario. You know, he cannot just not draw cards because he understands how on the clock he is against the warrior who's already up to 48. He recognized so early on that that was going to have to be something he had to do and just threw away a timeout out of his hand to reduce the amount of the number of cards he was going to burn, but still got punished by that Holy Wrath, just vanishing into the ether.
Put your faith in the light.
Saddle, I know you are a bit of a Zephyrus scientist yourself.
Indeed.
So I'm curious if here's something that you have tested. Is there a critical mass of cards in hand at which a 1-mana Zephyrus would give you Jiraxxus if you were to attempt to empty your hand? Because Zephyrus does understand classes, so I imagine it sees Warrior and is more inclined to provide Jiraxxus.
In my testing, that is the case. Yes, it is more influenced in doing it against Jiraxxus. As Monsanto ends the series with the concede, he recognizes that he needs to have that Ashbringer swing connect to have any opportunity to get through. Just a really, really bad beat, honestly, for Monsanto in that position. But to continue to answer your question, it struggles to offer it to you if it's ever going to lower your health in my position. It really doesn't like doing that, like taking you from 30 down to 15 with Jiraxxus is something that I've encountered as well. But I like where your head is at in terms of just trying to make something creative happen with a 1-mana Zephyrus. I do think that is a big dynamic that up until this point has only really been explored in Reno Mage, right, where you Pocket Galaxy your Zephyrus. And I think just as we were starting to get an understanding on Zephyrus, like the ability to discount it with Fr0zen just completely throws us for a loop now. But I mean, do you have anything to add to the end of that series? Is there anything you can add?
I was going to say, if we need to lower our life total to convince Zephyrus to give us Jiraxxus, we could Holy Wrath ourselves in the face. I'm just saying, I was looking for lines. I was fishing. I wanted the Jiraxxus.
If someone won a game of Hearthstone by Holy Wrathing themselves in the face for 25 so that they could get a Jiraxxus off a Zephyrus, that would be the single most legendary thing I've ever heard of.
Aren't the odds of that higher than conceding?
Certainly, yes.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm fishing, but this was an extremely important match to both of these players. Monsanto mentally, I imagine this one hurt very bad. I don't think he's fishing for a fraction of percentage outs. I think he probably wanted to walk away at that point.
Well, I think he did. I think he took one reasonable one, which was this board sticks, and then maybe I can rip a Holy Wrath over the next 1 to 2 turns before he can re-amass that armor total on top again. You know, it's a reasonable out, right? Like, what, half-ish, slightly more than half of the deck was drawn at that point from Fr0zen, like, to not have a Brawl or a Plague of Wrath or whatever else. Like, it exists. That world exists where you then get some minion damage to go through, but yeah, really, really, really bad beat. But we have to move on because we do have one more match to go in the day. Do stand by because myself and Fr0zen will be closing out the day for you with the last match for America's Playoffs.